All right, we are live again, doing a little bit of afternoon work here. Let me get my Amazon feed going here. All right, we're gonna go live. Okay, so this is kind of a budget-minded two-in-one that we're gonna be reviewing in a couple of days, and what I'm doing right now is running a stress test benchmark on it to see how it handles various things. And let me pull up our friends here. William Wilkinson, right on schedule. I know I can count on a number of you to come in like right when we kick things off. So yeah, this is an HP NV x360 15. This was on sale actually at a really good price during the early access sale. So you may have seen me streaming with this earlier because this was one of the laptops that was on deal, as they say on Amazon. And this one right now is selling for about 800 bucks. And the specs are in the chat, and I will pin this chat so you can see it. And I will also put it into the Amazon chat so people can see it there. So what I'm doing right now is I'm running the stress test benchmark from 3D Mark. And so we do this to figure out whether or not these things can handle themselves under load over an extended period of time. So we're going to let this kind of run. And we got some more friends joining us here. Poor Lee Buffalo is here. Hello! And then Arif Hassan is here. I give you credit, sir, for your persistence in that I acquire the Atari VCS. Now, what I'm running right now is a benchmark, again, called the stress test, the 3D Mark stress test. This is the TimeSpy stress test. And what this does is it runs the same test over and over again, and I've got it running on its full performance mode. And what you're not looking for here is a benchmark score of its performance and measurements of its frame rate or whatever. This is strictly to figure out whether or not the machine can maintain its performance under consistent load. And these benchmarks are great because they work both the graphics and the CPU portion of the processor. So you get a real good idea as to whether or not it can handle things. Can it handle the truth? We'll find out. Clifford Baring is here. Hello there. Thanks for stopping by. And Jonathan Salcido is here as well. Yep, so we're just going to let this run. So this test cycles 20 times, and unfortunately we're at loop 8. I thought it was going to be a little further ahead when I started the stream here. So we'll just hang out and chat for a little bit while we're waiting for this part to end. And if you are watching this after it's live, what I'm doing is all of the evaluative work that I do for a full review. And we have so many laptops right now that I have taken on some. Jake is working on a few other ones, and we may have like a week of laptop reviews just so I can get through this pile. I literally have a pile of laptops. And I've been busy. I've had basically two paid gigs for tutorial work. So I'm doing tutorials for Mevo and for Synology, and both of those are a lot of fun, but they take time. So that's been knocking me off track a little bit on the PC reviews and some of the other editorial content. Yeah, the TAM man, I am not sure on the RAM configuration. My guess is it's got like an 8 and a 4. I guess I could take it apart and see, but the problem is with these HPs, you got to peel the rubber feet off of it. I think it's dual channel. I'll confirm that because the benchmark score that I got on it, the regular TimeSpy test, came in around where the other ones like it come in. And if I'm not mistaken, I think these Ryzens can work with an unmatched pair. So 4 gigs, so 8 out of the 12, because it's on 2 sticks, I think, can run dual channel, and the remainder is single channel, if I remember correctly. But I didn't see a variation in the benchmark score that would indicate that it is not performing at its peak. I'm so tired because I didn't sleep very well last night, so I'm a little, not under the weather, but just tired. Actually, yeah, I mean, I'm looking, so if you go to Lon.TV/benchmarks and search for HP Envy X360 15, this has a Ryzen 5825U. And the score came in pretty much where the other Ryzens came in graphically and on the CPU side. So, for example, the Slim 7 Carbon with a 5800U had almost an identical, actually I'm going to use that one, had almost an identical score on the TimeSpy benchmark. Yes, it was like 1401 versus 1323. So this one's maybe a little behind, but not, I mean, it's within the margin of error, I think. So for storage, what would I prefer for an i5 processor? I mean, I guess it's a matter of what you're storing. If you're doing, a lot of photos or installing a lot of games, you'll probably want a larger drive. Really, it's a matter of what you want to store. I don't think the processor has much of a factor there. Now, my understanding on the RAM configuration with this, because they did send a teardown video that we'll have in the main video. And in the teardown video, there actually are two modules. So I think it might be an 8 and a 4. I'll find, I think there's a way I can find out, right? So we'll take a look at that in a minute. So we are on loop 13 of 20. We're almost done. And then after this, we'll load up a few games and get some stuff there. All right. And I just got another laptop to look at. All right, so we're going to let this continue to run here. It's almost done. And then we'll move on to some other stuff that's a little more interesting. How are you all doing? Romeric is here. Hello there. Good to see you. And William is applying for multiple jobs. I'm sure one of them is going to get back to you because everybody's struggling to find people, right? So I think if everyone watching puts in some good vibes for William, I bet you'll get a call back. That's what I think. So I'm going to put some vibes in, and hopefully some other folks do too. I would say out of the bunch, Costco would probably, for me, that's where I would want to work, just because you could get some good discounts on more tech. Opinion on the Apple TV at $129. Yeah, I just saw that. So the new Apple TV, I would say, because the other one with more storage and the Ethernet is only $20 more, I would probably go for that one, because there's no way to add the Ethernet to it. And my thing with streaming boxes, actually any device for that matter, if you're able to hardwire it in, I would do that, as opposed to going strictly on Wi-Fi. Just because Wi-Fi can, Wi-Fi is not, so Ethernet, if you're plugged into an Ethernet switch, every connection gets its own lane, right? And granted, there are saturation points, but generally, if let's say you're plugging into the same router, you all have a dedicated lane of traffic that you can use. Wi-Fi, everyone shares it, and you can get a lot of collisions. I did a video, this was a sponsored video we did for the Mocha Alliance a few years back, But what we did is I demonstrated in a game what happens when a Wi-Fi connection is saturated. So you could go from having a really good solid ping rate to a pretty lousy one just by having activity in the home, right? All right, we're almost there. We've got a few more left here. This is 16 of 20. Here we go, some good vibes from Clifford for William. See, this is what I like on my channel, is that we are nice to each other. Positivity matters, I think. Kevin is here from Lakeland, Florida. Now, was Lakeland, yeah, Lakeland got hit by the storm, right? You guys are on that, well, I guess you're kind of more central Florida, so hopefully you didn't have too bad of an experience with that. But that was a pretty tough storm that came through. I may be going back down to Cape Canaveral. I got to figure out that trip. I did book my CES trip, so we're going to go to Vegas this year for CES, and we'll have some fun doing CES stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. Got a new member, Matthew Burden. Thanks for joining at the silver level. Your support is appreciated. Yeah, it's kind of a low-key stream today. And this is I don't want to say this is a budget laptop, but I think it's going to give you some of the premium features that under $1,000. And I did see the adapter for charging the pencil. So my understanding is the new pencil, well, the newly packaged pencils come with the adapter. But yeah, right. I mean, you're sticking like, why not do the second generation pencil, which would charge with I guess they're probably trying to hit a price point. Yeah, I did order one for review, so we'll get one of those new iPads in. And I was looking at this thinking like, wow, the price is so much more, because the entry-level device, the thing they call iPad, has always been in the $300 range. Right now it's $349, but a couple of years ago I got my kids the iPad that was the iPad that year for $249. And so when I saw this at like $450, I was like, wow, that's a lot for the iPad. But I guess what they're doing is, this is the iPad, but there's also the 9th generation iPad, the one from last year. That one is still being sold at the $300-ish price range. And I'm guessing they're probably doing that for the education pricing. So the older iPad, which is also called iPad, is still available. And then the new iPad is also available with a slightly larger screen. It's going to be very confusing for people. So my guess would be next year that new iPad will become the iPad. And I don't know what they'll do. Maybe they'll upgrade the Air to the M2, right? But there's so much overlap on these iPads. And that keyboard and trackpad folio thing, usually I like to order the keyboard to go with it just to show how it all works, but $250 for a keyboard and a trackpad. So you could deck this thing out and be in the ballpark of a MacBook Air, which I think would be a lot more flexible, right? So it's hard to say. I use an iPad, but not frequently. I use it for meetings and stuff, but I just can't do a lot of productive work on it. So more often than not, I'm just using the MacBook Air. And the MacBook Air I use a lot. Like, this thing is, you can see I got to clean it off with some whoosh in a little bit. But I love this computer. This has been, I would say that, the MacBook Air, if you're looking for something like that's just a good all-round laptop, it's just spectacular. But this is not too bad, because you could play your games on this one with a bigger screen, right? So it's a touch screen also. This is the last loop here. So David Bound is wondering price points at Costco for the new iPad. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of variation in pricing. So that will probably be what they're going to do. This drive here, Kevin Hawthorne. Oh, were you asking me that? No. Matthew was asking. But Kevin Hawthorne did not lose power during the storm, which is good. Yeah, when we get storms here, we lose power for a week. Norman Tucker is here. Hello there. William has an iPad mini from 4 or 5 years ago. Still have it, but don't use it because I heard they discontinued the mini. So the mini is still around. In fact, I reviewed the new mini about a year ago. I like the Mini actually, but I'm not using it as much as I was initially. So Matthew wants to know which drive do we have here. This is a PNY 480 gigabyte portable SSD. If you click on the Amazon link, you can find it there. It's a nice portable drive. It's not USB-C, it's regular USB, but you can of course get a USB. This is a USB-B cable, I think, or micro B to A or C. But it's a it's a nice little drive. Right now on Amazon, they have the 480, which I think this one is, is $68. But I like it just because it's small, and this is what we use for all of our Steam games. All right, the test is done, and this is actually a good score. So 99.4% is the score we got on it. And that means it does not throttle, at least on that test, which is good. And then we also want to look for the temperature. So we're going to go down to the temperature. And I had this tree fall down in my yard the other night. It was loud. Like it was dead, and it came down it just like fell over. Didn't crack or anything. It just uprooted and fell over. The ground was really saturated. And it was so dead that the branches just shattered. It was like almost like glass shattering across the backyard. And I heard it. It actually shook the ground. Thankfully, it was very far from the house. But now I got this guy out there cutting the tree up. I don't know how much this is going to cost me. My landscaper just like, oh yeah, the guy's coming today. I was like, we should have talked about price first. But that's all right. We'll find out. All right, so the CPU temperature on this was 54 degrees Celsius. So let me just put the score in. So this was 99.4%. So that's a good indicator that they've got a decent cooling system on it. And actually, I was at a preview event that HP had, and they were talking about how they really put some effort into fixing or improving their cooling systems. And it looks like, at least from this test, that it does appear to be doing that. So let's go down and grab the temperature off of here. And I'm putting this data into my benchmark sheet at Lon.TV/benchmarks. So 54C to F is 129.2 Fahrenheit. 54C, 129.2 F. It's actually running pretty cool, to be honest. Not too bad on the cooling front. And this has a Ryzen 5825U. So we'll drop that in there. Oops. Drop that in there, and then we'll load up a game or two. All right, and then we've got like some Linux to test and some other things there too. Okay, so now we've got that done. So now what we'll do is we will pair up my Xbox controller here. This is a legit Xbox controller, but it would work obviously with any controller that's Windows compatible. And we'll go into our Bluetooth settings. Hey, is the new Andor episode on tonight, or is that tomorrow night? I've been loving Andor. I don't know if any of you have been watching it. But when I was talking to my cousin, who's a little bit older than me, got me into Star Wars as a kid. And we were talking about all these new Star Wars shows. And I said, you know, like, we don't care what it is as long as it's Star Wars. Like, we'll like it. So, CF542 is here. Hello there. And yep, it is not a cheap laptop by any stretch. But I'll tell you, the battery life is awesome. The performance is great. Yeah, I'm not sure what I bet you there was probably some cost involved in getting that capacitive charger hooked up to that iPad. And I will use my iPad for meetings occasionally. So there are things that I use it for, but not to the extent that I use the MacBook. And I like having windowed applications where I can put windows on top of each other. I guess you can do that on the new M1 Mac, but Yeah, I would have preferred they went with the new pencil, because now you've got this adapter, you know, like this ugly adapter just to adapt it. And like, why have a Gen 2? Why call the pencil Gen 2 when like it never, the Gen 1 never gets phased out? What they should do, they should have called the new pencil the Pro Pencil, so that at least it's differentiated, because I bet you there's a lot of people that buy the second gen pencil thinking that's the newer one and the better one, and then they find out it doesn't work with their iPad, right? So the CPU, I think I pinned it in the chat. It is a Ryzen 5825U. Let me know if you don't see it up there. Oh, there you are. Never mind. Yeah, Andor has been great. Oh, it's after midnight on Wednesday. Okay, so that's why I was looking at the thing. I was like, oh, it looks like it comes out today, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stay up that late. I'm getting old. By the time I get my kids to bed, I'm like, all right, it's time for me to go to bed. All right, let's load up Red Dead Redemption 2. I had loaded this during the live stream the other night, but I neglected to record any footage. And I could grab the live stream and pull it off of there, but I have to convert the video file because it's a WebM. It's a whole big to-do, so I'm just going to re-record it. It'll probably take just about that length of time. I don't think any M2s have come up yet, but they will. And another tip for you, by the way, I don't think the Apple educational pricing is another thing to look at. If you have kids, you're automatically in. And I've got a couple of ins because I am a part-time college professor and I have kids. So I get access to that pricing. Birdman, thank you for the follow on Amazon. And CF was thinking maybe the screen. That could be too. Yep, that could be part of it. So the MacBook, the iPad Air, right? The iPad Air, the iPad Air, the M1 iPad Air works with the second gen pencil. But and then of course the Pros work with the second gen pencil. And by the way, the iPad Mini works with the second gen pencil because all of those have the USB-C port. This new one has the USB-C, but it doesn't have the second gen pencil support. So now you need an adapter. Pros and cons of Windows 11. Well, I've been using 11 on my gaming PC, and I use Windows 11 on my Windows laptop PC and on my Mac running Windows. But I do not run it on my production PC yet because there's still some issues with vMix. But I think 11 is not as, depending on your hardware, I don't think 11 is as big of an upgrade as going from like 7 to 10 was, right? So the compatibility, I didn't notice any real compatibility issues there. All right, so now this is Red Dead Redemption 2, and we are running this at, so we're going to do 3, I usually run 3 games just to get a good benchmark. And we are at lowest settings at 1080p. And you may not be able to see the frame rate up there, but I'll tell you what I see. So I think this was my recommendation on the prior versions of these 5800 series chips. Let me just make a note here for the games that we're running here. .1080p, we're getting about 20 frames per second. And actually, we're running a little lower than that. And I think, if I remember correctly, so this is running with the 5825. So this is the 5000 series chips. And I should probably hit the record button here so I get this footage recorded. So give me 1 second here. And we're going to call this, I'm going to make a new folder. And this is going to be the HP. Bear with me here, folks. Where did my new folder go? There it is. I still have to swap out the hard drive on my production machine. X360 15 2022. And we'll save it here and hit OK. So this is running at about 20 frames per second. And I like to like go into this little village here where you've got a house to render and that sort of thing. So what I need to do before I shoot the full review is to just go back and look at how some of my other 5800 series machines ran this game. But yeah, we're getting about 20 frames per second at this resolution. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to save that file and log it. And I'm going to turn the resolution down to 720p. And let's see if we get a better frame rate, which we should get. So Sam Adams wants to know. Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm at with this. I was thinking the exact same thing you were. Even the M1 MacBook Air is close to that price, especially on sale, right? Like remember they were having, actually if I'm not mistaken, the M1 MacBook Air during the Prime preview sale that they had the other day, the early access sale, that was selling for what this new iPad with the keyboard would cost you, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not feeling it, but I did order one to review, so you will see it on this channel. All right, at 720p, I think I'll use probably this clip. So at 720p, we're at 30 frames per second, and this is consistent, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 30 to 35. This is consistent with the other Ryzen 5000 series laptops we looked at performance-wise. 720p with this game was the sweet spot. Oh, what happened? Oh, that was a little glitch there. I think that was definitely the sweet spot there. So yeah, we're running at about 30-ish here, 30 to 35. So not bad, but you know, the 6000 series is so much better. It's amazing, actually, just how much better it is. Now, they do have a version of this with an NVIDIA GPU. And I think what HP's doing here is they're putting in parts that are more readily accessible at this price point. So the GPU version has an NVIDIA 2000 series, not a 3000 series. I think it's like a 2050, which is probably easier for them to source right now. All right, so I would say 720p is the sweet spot here. Fan noise isn't bad, actually. It's running right now, of course, but it's... I'm just going to make a note here real quick. 720p. Actually, I'll make a 30 to 35 FPS. The fan noise is not bad at all. It is... Considering that it scored so well on the stress test, it isn't bad. It's certainly audible, but it's not a high-pitched fan noise. It's very understated. So I have heard much noisier laptops before, and this one is certainly not in that category. So there you go. Okay, so we're good there. So we'll move on to the next game. And Screen Playhouse says, as a former Mac-only user for 29 years, I find Windows 11 a recommend for normal computer users. 10 was an almost, and everything prior, meh. Yeah, I think Windows 11 is pretty solid. It's gotten better. In particular, what I have liked about Windows 11 is that it is considerably better when it comes to, I'm going to update No Man's Sky here real quick. It is considerably better when it comes to ARM-based computers. So, for example, when you're running with an ARM-based Windows machine, the compatibility is better because it'll run 64-bit and 32-bit Intel applications without anything beta installed on it. So it is much more stable with legacy applications. And I found on the MacBook Air in particular, because we did a whole video on parallels, I found that it ran exceptionally well. All right, let's do a little No Man's Sky. I have been re-addicted to No Man's Sky. I've been playing it on my Steam Deck. The Steam Deck has become like almost like a little addiction machine for me, because some of these PC games work really well on it. Like No Man's Sky is fantastic on my Steam Deck. So here's what I've been doing, and this is why I'm so tired, I think. So I started a new game on No Man's Sky because my original save was from when the game first came out. And as you all know, the game when it first came out was very different than what it is today. So sometimes your save game doesn't work very well on the newer iterations. So this is like version 4 of the No Man's Sky game. So I decided when 4.0 came out just to start a whole new game. So I've got about 24 hours almost into this in the course of maybe 2 weeks. But I'm building out my empire again. So I have a freighter, I have frigates, I have 2 bases. I have like a mining operation that I set up on a really volatile planet. So that is something. And Hey Jiro's got a good point on the Microsoft account. It is compulsory. That you are correct about that. And I don't know, is it compulsory on all versions, or is it just the home version? I think it might be on all versions. But this game is, I just love this game. And there's no like end to it. And I'm sure many of you have heard about it. But I've always been a big fan of spaceship games ever since I was a little kid. Like the game had to have a spaceship for me to play it. And then there was Pac-Man, of course. But this game like checks all the boxes for me. Even when it was out in its minimally viable product form, it spoke to me. So what you do is you fly around in this spaceship and you explore this procedurally generated universe. And every planet, and there's billions of them, it's crazy. There's this huge universe of multiple universes and multiple galaxies. And so it's crazy. So right now we're on my freighter. Let me I'm just going to look at the settings that we have, because it is running a little sluggish here. So I think we're going to recommend, yeah, this is 1080. But let me see what I have the graphics settings at. Yeah, it's all standard. So I think, let me let it run out here for a second just to see how it does. But I think we're going to go down to 720p here also. I seem to remember these 5000 series doing better, but maybe I'm mistaken. Because we're at about, on this ship right now, we're at like 20 frames per second, which is about what we were at before with the other game. Let me hop in here though, and I have the latest drivers on here too. This has just the Ryzen chip on it. So there is a version with a GPU, but this one is just relying on its Ryzen processor. So what's cool about this game is that you hop in your ship, and if you want to go to this planet, you can just go to the planet. You want to go to that planet, you can go, where did it go? You can go to that planet if you want, or that one. And you can set your base down, and then because these universes are so big, most of the time you're the first person to discover the planet. But when you discover a planet and you put a base on it, it gets uploaded to their server. So if somebody else comes across it, they'll know that you discovered it. So you can see my home planet is called Lonville, and it says you discovered this, which is really fun, right? It's possible that could be. But normally I would see this pick up in the benchmark. So that's why I'm wondering if there's something else going on, or maybe I'm just misremembering. I think I'm misremembering what these chips are able to do. Because there's been this horse race between AMD and Intel for a while. So I think that might be what I am remembering here, but we'll find out when I go back through. All right, so, and actually I'll look right now. So the the Slim 7 Carbon 2022 is very similar to this one for its processor. So let me go and look at let me pull that one up real quick. I'm going back to my notes. So Slim 7 Carbon from back in March. I bet you I haven't even reviewed this one yet. Yeah, so yeah, Red Dead Redemption 2 came in around 25 frames per second at essentially 1080p. So I think this is probably in the ballpark there. And let me see what a 4800U did. Let's see. Oh, ships are coming in. Never mind. There's a fleet arriving. So these fleets come in randomly, and then you can acquire some of these ships. You can hire them, and they'll join your fleet. This is a computer player. This is not an NPC, as they say. But yeah, we're getting about 30 frames per second in space here. Let me look at the B-Link. One of these was the SER4. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so yeah, let's go down to the planet real quick and just see what we get on the planet. I'm going to go visit my base. So this planet is a very nice planet that I started out on. I got very lucky. It put me on a paradise planet to begin with, or a system that had a paradise planet. So I didn't have to find a different place to set down on. But this is the deal with this game. You get in your spaceship and you can just land on the planet. So here you are. Here's your planet. And it's the size of a planet, and it's all procedurally generated. So all of this, granted there are art assets that they put into place, but it mixes and matches the assets. So all of the creatures look different. And then every update, they always add more assets to the mix. So it's usually oh, I forgot I put a landing pad on my base here. So this is my base. I'm still working on it. All right, so let me hop out here. Yeah, so I'm getting about 20 frames per second on the planet. Yeah, it's about 20, just running around here. And this is at the standard resolution. Now, what happened is that they upped, about a year or two ago, they upped the graphic fidelity in the game. So I think even at its base level, there was a greater it was pushing things a little bit further. Let me go over to this thing here. So No Man's Sky, 1080p, 20 FPS, planet side, 30 space. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this and dial it back to 720p. And apply that. And we're at standard settings, which is basically the low settings, essentially. Yeah, so now we're at 30. And by the way, on my Steam Deck, I can usually hit 60 in this game. It's not consistently 60. But I got to really double check these numbers I'm getting. And give me 1 second. I'll get some more chats here in a second. All right, there we go. So I got to ask them about this. It is, maybe I can load up CPU-Z or something. It has 12 gigabytes. And from the benchmarks that I ran, it is running at dual channel performance for its processor type. But I wonder if perhaps some of these games are pushing the envelope a bit more when it comes to memory. Because if I am not mistaken, if you have 12 gigabytes installed, the first 8 will run dual channel and the remaining 4 will not. So, this is running now at a solid 30 to 35. Oh, this game looks awesome on a big screen. And actually, what I do with this, so I've been testing I have the GeForce Now service, and I also just plug my gaming PC into what I usually do is I have a fiber optic HDMI cable. So my gaming PC is in the same room as my home theater system. And I have a fiber optic HDMI cable that runs from the computer into my television. So I can run this on my 4K OLED at 4K at the highest settings. And it runs like, well over 60 frames per second, believe it or not. And it runs great off my gaming unit. And this game is awesome on that TV. For sure. Yes, this is my base here. And I'll show you the other base. So over here is my little Stargate. So this base is kind of like my home operation. And then I set up this new base called Show Me the Money. And this is on a really toxic planet. It's heavily radioactive. But the radioactivity is... I couldn't find heavily... Oh, my watch went off. The radioactivity on this planet allows it to generate, or allows for the presence of, more valuable commodities. So this planet's called Pixo, but my base is called Show Me the Money. I'm in a construction phase right now because I just added a platform here for my ship to land on. But I've got to redo the roof because if you don't have a roof over your head, the radiation will kill you within like 10 minutes. So you have to be like really quick. So what I have here is a bunch of solar panels. So this is getting the electricity. Now the sun never sets on this planet, but the variation of light differs throughout the course of its day. So right now we're in the dark hours. And so there's an energy budget here. So my demand is 320 kp, whatever that means. And so I'm able to generate 350 even when we're in the dark phase. So that can power the Stargate. I have a couple of batteries here in case we have any anomalies going on at the time of darkness to keep everything running. And these are storage tanks for the activated indium that these mining units are currently mining. So whenever I log into the game, I just head over to my supply depot and I pick up, so this is worth about 1.5 million credits, which is enough to buy another frigate generally. But they recently nerfed the value of this activated indium. So there are, it's not as profitable as it used to be. So that load would have netted me about, I think, like 10 million units before. And they're also pretty smart about it. So if I go and dump this at a space station, the price will go down for a couple of days. So there's some economy to this. So you have to go travel some other place to get the best price for it. So that's how that works. So generally I hit the Stargate, I grab my stuff, and I get the heck out of there because this planet is deadly. So we're going to go back to my ships. This is what happens. I start playing this and I get totally engrossed in it again. And there's always something to do. Like what I like about the game is that it's all like almost self-driven. So there is like a storyline to it. So they have like, you're trying to figure out why you even exist. And there's this whole notion of the universe being a simulation. It kind of explores a lot of that philosophy of the universe being a simulation. And so you have like a whole storyline related to that. You've got base building, ship building, multiple base building, like building your battle fleet. You can have squadrons now of fighters that follow you around, so you can hire people to be in your squad. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just so much to do. And there's really no end game. Like you can finish the different storylines, but you still exist afterward. And then what happens is you start off in this Euclid galaxy, and eventually, I think there's like 15 other galaxies with billions of stars in them. It's pretty crazy. So right now we're on my capital ship here. And what I want to do is check in on my freighter missions. So I've been sending my ships out on missions, and then you get money for the completion of those missions. I think this is the right door. And when they did the update, they changed the layout of the ships. So I'm totally lost now walking around the ship. So let me go back in. They did add some teleporters there, so you don't have to keep walking back and forth to your ship, but you still have to walk to the rooms here. So this is a trading unit, so if we try to trade some stuff here, let's go to sell, see what we can get for that stuff we just mined. Oh, wow. I have 17,000, but so the demand right now is running 17.2% below market price. So I'm going to lose my shirt on that. I can get more for it in another system. So I'll travel later tonight. So I have 2 fleets of ships out right now. And let's see what we've got here. I think one of these missions is still active. Oh, okay, this one came back. Oh, he's got another 4 hours left. Okay, so that one's going to go for another 4 hours. I started that one last night. And this one's done. And all the ships survived. So now we can debrief the commander here. This is USB-C Gen 2. It's not USB 4, unfortunately. Got some ferrite, enriched carbon, chromatic metal, magno gold, 288,000 credits, another 313,000 credits. So we did okay on this one. Not bad. All right, so we were able to get some stuff from that mission, and I'll deal with that later. This is on the PC itself, and we're just testing it out to see how it does. So right now we're at 720p and getting about 30 frames per second. So what I'm going to do is just fly down to one of the planets and just do another set of B-roll at 720p. And then we'll move on to another game. What do you say? If I can find my way out of this maze of a ship that I have. But see, now what you can do, actually let me send 2 more ships out on another mission here. So those ships that came back, I can send back out. This is my navigation guy, and he's the one that collects all the mission opportunities. So here's a trade expedition, so maybe we'll send them off on that. Do I have a trade? Yeah, 2 trade freighters. This will be good. So that. And I have a combat frigate for protection. So you have to have a good mix of ships in order for these ships to be successful. So they'll go off, and then later tonight they will return, and hopefully I'll have some more money. So I'm always about getting the money. You got to build the empire. Here, I'll show you what this ship looks like. So we'll get into my little fighter here. I am still on the ship that you start off the game with, but there's procedurally generated ships, so every ship is different in appearance. I'll get a little bit further away from my ship here so you can see what it looks like. So where did it go? It's up here. It's a little dark right now, but you can see the capital ship. It's a big ship. And right now my frigate is away somewhere else. So the good news is you don't have any of the I have all these aliens that work for me, but I don't have to worry about paying any of them. They just kind of show up for free. So yeah, because I was looking on the ship, so what happened was the ship, your first freighter you get by fighting off pirates that are attacking it. And so after you fight off the pirates, the commander of the ship just gives it to you. But then subsequent ships cost tens of millions of credits. They're not cheap. All right, so we'll land on the ship here. So let me start recording here and clear that out of here. I'll just do some B-roll walking around the planet here. So we're getting about 30 to 35 frames per second at 720p. So it feels like on this one that 720p is the sweet spot. And to what people were talking about earlier, I have a feeling that there might be some issues on some of these games that are more demanding when it comes to the 12 gigabytes of RAM. Because I just remember these games running better at 1080p on this processor, but I could be mistaken. Like I said, I'll go back through some of my older reviews and just make sure I'm on track with that. But we're getting about 30 to 35 frames per second on the planet. And the planets in this game are very unpredictable because they're all different. So there's always different things getting rendered, and so no 2 planets are the same in this game, and there's billions of them. But this is my home planet. All right. I have played probably hundreds of hours over the last 5 years on this game. Like I said, it's just one of these games that I just love it, and I'm trying to get more of my friends into it because it's lonely by yourself. And what's really neat is that you could be playing and you might come across other players, and if there's somebody else in the same galaxy that you are, and you're both online or the same solar system, you'll see each other. All right, let me just make a log of this one. This is 202. And we're going to do Linux next after we do one more game here. All right. Yeah, Intergalactic IRS. There's no taxman, thankfully, in the Intergalactic IRS is non-existent. And let's just do Doom Eternal here real quick, and then we'll call it for the games. Yeah, so the multiplayer is kind of fun, and there was I haven't been on there recently, but there's a Reddit group for No Man's Sky, and they set up a community planet where everybody on the subreddit set up a base, so you would always encounter people. And what happened as a result of that planet kind of being the hub is that for light years all around it, all of the neighboring solar systems are heavily populated with other players. So you can get a real feel as to how the multiplayer aspect of No Man's Sky works when you're in an area of a lot of density. And what they've been doing is creating, because again, these universes are infinitely large to the point where, even with, I don't know how many people have bought the game over the last 5 years, even with all these people playing the game every day, most planets you encounter have not yet been discovered by somebody, right? So, because it gives you you get credit for it every time you land on one of them. So encountering players is very rare. But if you were to get with a group of people, it's less rare, especially a larger group, because they'll start settling. It's almost like how settlements work. You start settling around the borders of the thing there. So yeah, we're going to boot up Ubuntu in a minute after we do a little test of Doom Eternal. And let's just go over to the settings here. Where's the settings for this game? Is it customize? Yeah, no. Oh, here we go. Hit the start button. All right, video. For some reason, it's at 640 by 480. What the heck is that? So we are at a 16 by 9. Yeah, I'll leave it at 1080p. And I'm going to set the quality to low. Got to apply changes, right stick. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go to campaign, game slot 1, and we'll just continue the game we're on. This is another game I haven't gotten into yet. All right, so this is Doom. This game usually runs pretty quick, so we'll see how this one does. And what I like to do is just get over to this scene here, which is a little more challenging. So this, at 1080p lowest settings, is running at about 45 to 50 frames per second. Yeah, right now it's about 53. So I'm going to say this one is like 45, yeah, about 45 to 50 right here. So this game does a little better. And I think there might be that memory issue. So I think what we'll do next, let me just log this clip. And I've got about another 20 minutes or so before I got to close up for the night here. All right, so there we go. All right, so now why don't we look at CPU-Z here. I got to download it. So we shall download that. And I haven't installed Chrome or Brave on here yet, so let's grab that. And I don't have an ad blocker running either. And you always got to be careful on these things because what happens, see that? That's a fake ad that gets you to try to download. Like these ads are awful. And I think these are Google ads too, which is just horrendous. Okay, so we'll download CPU-Z. So they still have yet to fix this problem. I don't think they're going to fix it, to be honest with you. Every 55 minutes, this is a YouTube problem, I drop out. Okay, so it's telling me that I've got dual channel memory. I don't think it's got a 6 and 6 on it though. And I'm not sure if there's a way to get that information. Unless one of you knows of a tool. So that's the CPU info. If we go to motherboard, and memory, you know, so it's saying here 2x64-bit, the number of channels. So it's reporting a dual channel. That guy is still cutting down that tree, cutting up that tree out back there. I wonder how long he's been doing that for. Yeah, oh, HW info. Yeah, let's try that one real quick and see what that one tells us. Yeah, it's definitely reporting a... I suppose if we were to take it apart, we would be able to see that pretty easily. But all right, let's do hardware info. All right, so I'm assuming, yeah, this is the right one here. Here you go, another one. Download, download, download. It's all fake. We're going to do portable. All right, that is downloaded. And let's go to hardware info here. By the way, you can see how much time it takes to get one of these reviews done. I still haven't installed the video editing software. So a lot of what Jake does for me is immensely helpful because, you know, a lot of times we'll spend like 7, 8 hours on just one computer. He does like 2 at a time now. He's getting pretty good at it. All right, so I'm looking. GPU, where's the memory? Is it on? Oh, here it is. So memory, total memory size 12 gigabytes. Number of channels supported 2, active channels 2. What I don't get is the size of each module. But I think what we're seeing with the games, and if I remember correctly, because I was corrected on this from something I did earlier, that these Ryzen chips will make use of dual channel up until you get out of the pairing, and after that it'll kind of revert the remaining memory as a single channel thing. All right, you know what we'll do when we boot Linux up? We'll try that. Now, Hey Jero says, in the main window, oh, sorry, Barrett says, the main window in the center, you should be able to select modules. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm guessing here, right? Oh, memory modules. Yep, here we go. Blank. It's blank. What? Why is it blank? Tell me what I need to know. It is blank. That is effed up. Let's see. It is saying dual channel, though. And thank you for the super chat, 2 of them it looks like, from Dorothy Tyrannus. Thank you very much for your dual chat. I use Nanite because when we were, I used it more in the past when I was doing this myself. What I would love Nanite to be able to do would be to give me the opportunity to put more of my own apps on it. Their professional version, which allows for that, is very expensive. Yeah, I think they were trying to hit a price point here, and I bet you that's why they're doing this with 12 gigabytes. I've seen this before, right? And their higher end models will have 16. You can configure it with 16 too, of course, or upgrade it later. I can try to find out, though. I can reach out to HP and say, what's the deal with the memory? All right, let's try a Linux boot here. Now, what's likely going to happen when I do the Linux boot is that after I come back to Windows, it's going to require me to type in my, the encryption gets broken whenever you do one of these boots. It's awful. All right, so now, and I gotta remember how to get into the BIOS on this thing. It's like either F12 or delete. Every one of these things is different. So I'm just gonna hit F12 and delete here. One of those is bound to work. Nope, that wasn't it. It boots up pretty quick though, doesn't it? So let's try, and it's got an update waiting. So I gotta make sure I don't select the wrong update. So let's try F2 and F10, delete and, yeah, Hey Jero thinks maybe it's got, 4 or 8 soldered on the board. From the teardown that they sent me, it looks like it has 2 modules on it. And I went into the hardware diagnostics, so that's not what I want. But maybe we can get some, let's take a look at the memory. Aha! Here's what we were looking for. So there are 2 slots. Slot 1, 4 gigabytes. Slot 2, 8 gigabytes. Although it's possible, and it says right and left. And from the picture that they sent me, it looks as though that's the case. What's interesting is that the modules are from different manufacturers. So the 4 gig module is from Samsung, and the 8 gig module is from Hynix. And Tamman says, instead of random F keys, hold shift when clicking restart. Okay, let's try that. Which shift, the left one or the right one? And escape. Okay, so let's try that too. Let's try escape first and see what we get. So we'll go to main menu. At least we got the answer on the RAM. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, so we'll hit escape. See if that gets us. Yeah, so from the teardown video, here we go, and boot menu, F9. And I'm pretty sure that this hard drive has Linux on it. Yep, it does. And we're going to try Ubuntu. And these are these little Crucial SSDs. Dollar for dollar, you can get like a 2 terabyte one for what a 1 terabyte or even less would cost from other brands. These are not all that fast on sequential stuff, but for this kind of thing, it's fine. Space Bug Space Station is here. I think that's Meatface with it in his alien costume for Halloween. All right, let's see what we get here. We have a blank screen, but that doesn't mean anything just yet. I think what I might need to do is, oh, there it goes. Yeah, they're super fast on those boots, aren't they? For sure. All right, good news, that works. And here we go. So we're going to try Ubuntu. And, my Linux testing typically is really a kind of a scratch the surface kind of strategy, which is, will it work? So I keep my boot disk up to date with the most recent version of Ubuntu. And what I look for is what gets detected, right? So does the audio work, right? All that kind of stuff. Now I can tell you, there it is. I was about to say, I thought the mouse stopped working, but it's still there. So Wi-Fi, let's select the network. Wi-Fi works, so I'm going to select my home network here. So the Wi-Fi works, and what we want to look for next is the Bluetooth. So let's see if that works. And Bluetooth doesn't work. So you have these weird things that happen. Sometimes the Bluetooth works and the Wi-Fi doesn't. But here it looks like it's going there. We'll figure it out. Lee1302, thanks for stopping by. Hello to you. So I am not a Linux expert or day-to-day user, I should say. I like Ubuntu just because I feel like it's from a I focus on consumer tech, and so from a consumer tech standpoint, I found Ubuntu to be something that I could hand to somebody and they'd know what to do with it. Let's put it that way. And it's come a long way, for sure. All right, so we know video works. Does the touchscreen work? Yes, touchscreen works. Oddly, Firefox doesn't let you move its windows with your finger, so we can pull up a different app here. So if I pull up, yeah, we'll open that. Oh, that's a good idea. That might be it, Justin. Is there a manual Bluetooth switch? There is no. There is not. There is one for the webcam, but not for the Bluetooth. And Mint is another one that I hear a lot. Mint cinnamon. That sounds spicy. All right, so let's close this out. But you look at like what you get now, and I remember like back in, so I go back a long ways, as you all know. And so for a long time, back in the 90s when I was getting into PCs, it was expensive to have more than one computer. Like you could not get a computer, even build one for under $1,000, I think, for the most part, unless you had something really old. And so storage was expensive also, and it was not, as a college kid, it wasn't accessible to have an extra computer that I could play around with. But by the time I got to my senior year of college, I had pieced together enough components so that I had 2 computers. So I built my first computer around 1997 or so. And so I started playing around with some of the Linux distributions at the time, and it was just, it was awful from a consumer standpoint. And Michael Kidd is working for Red Hat. And Red Hat, this is even before Red Hat. I think I was using like one of the original versions of, was it Debian that was out there initially? Or there was some build that everybody was using back in 97 or so. Red Hat is also a nice distro, but it's come so far. All of them have, as Michael Kidd says. Like you could, boot it up and use it, and it looks familiar, right? And what's great is that everything's free, right? So Mark Smith got started with BSD Unix. Maybe that's what I was on. I can't remember the distro that I was playing around with, but it was rough. It was rough. Yeah, Start X, right? You had to go into the command line. It was like this whole big thing, and now so much of this happens in the background. Even the package management, like used to have to, every app you had to compile, and it was a nightmare. And Michael uses Fedora for his distribution of choice. Slackware, that's what it was. And Michael says, ever write your own X11 monitor? Well, I remember back in 2002, when I was working for my family business, we were putting in an ERP system to manage our inventory. And we contracted with these consultants who were excellent. They were old school IT guys from like the big iron, mainframe days. And they knew their stuff. They were excellent coders. And they were also very good consultants on warehouse management efficiency. So they're just a perfect fit for us. And they custom wrote this entire system. And we had a choice to make when we were putting our servers together. They said, do you want to put a Windows server together, or do you want to do Linux? Because the Windows server, to license everything properly, this is 2002, was, just for the software side, I think it was going to be like, it was like thousands of dollars. I think it was like $5,000 per server, and we had 2 of them. I may be off, but it was thousands of dollars for all the licenses and all the other stuff. And so they said, well, why don't, we can also run this on Red Hat. And it wasn't Fedora, it was just like the Red Hat server thing. And they hired this Unix guy. He was a Linux guy. And he was like, you couldn't understand a word this guy said. And these 2 guys were like, just be prepared. We trust this guy. He knows what he's doing to get the system set up. But you're not going to be able to understand a word he says, because we can't either. And he comes down, and he's just like, blah, 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 and he's like banging keys. And before you know it, he's got this system up. And I kid you not, this system was never turned off for, I don't think we ever updated it. It wasn't on the internet. It wasn't exposed in a way that would have been bad. I don't think we ever rebooted the machine in 10 years. It was just rock solid. And then we hit the wall because we had never updated Red Hat over the years, and whatever kernel update that happened would have required a tremendous amount of work to get the system upgraded from one version of Red Hat to another. And we had to upgrade it because the database that we were using for the system was at a new version that wasn't available for the version of Red Hat that we had. It was a whole long thing. So we ended up at that point, I think, going back to Windows because the Unix whisperer had disappeared. But it was pretty crazy. But my first use of Unix was when I was, and I actually did a video on this, this is again this is 94, 93, 94. There was in the back of PC Magazine, there was a ISP out in Iowa, or it was Iowa, I think. They were advertising a free internet service that you would dial into a Sun workstation, and you had a command line to get on the internet. And back then, that was the internet. It was all text, FTP, Telnet, and it was amazing. It was like the whole world suddenly opened up, but I had to pay a toll phone call to get out there. But it was legit free, and the way it was a freemium internet model. So their model was, they get you in for free, get your email address. I was using Pine. Chris Allegretta may remember Pine. And I was using Pico for my text editing, and the text editor in Pine for email was based on Pico. And what they did is they would give you only a certain amount of time that you could be dialed into the system. And if you wanted more storage on the server, or you wanted more time to log in, then you could pay to upgrade to the next level. And then at that point, the internet business started opening up. We got a local ISP here in Connecticut that was advertising on all of the FidoNet bulletin board systems. Hey, we've got internet. So I signed up for that one. Again, it was limited by the hour, and we had to pay a monthly fee for it. And they were only on a 56K leased line. So when I was downloading, there was a 2-step process to downloading. You had to download onto the server you were connected to, and then you had a SZ in a terminal window to Z modem it down to your local computer. So yeah, I used Gopher, Archie. I used Lynx. I used a text-based IRC client. I used TIN for Usenet. That was fun, and having to do like binary UUE stuff. And so I did a video, oh gosh, now probably a couple years ago. It was like one of my nostalgia videos on 90s internet. And what I did is I got a Raspberry Pi, and I installed all those applications because they're still out there. Pine, I think it's now called Alpine, but Alpine is the equivalent email thing. I connected it to my Gmail. So I had Alpine on there. I had the IRC, TIN, Finger. Remember the Finger thing? So I used to finger people to see, and it was a legit networking tool called Finger. And everybody had their own little Finger page. It was like a home page, and you could see when they were last logged into their system, and it worked over the internet. So I could, if somebody fingered my email address, so back then it was something lon@cyberspace.net or lon@pcnet.com was one of my earlier email addresses, and I had a little plan file. I have all of this in the video. And so you could put a little thing about what you were up to, and everybody would finger John Carmack, who, as many of you know, is the guy behind Doom. And we were all waiting for Quake to come out, and so John Carmack's plan file was heavily checked every day to see if he was on track. We had another thing called Unix Talk where you could actually talk to people. So it was pretty neat. Chris Allegretta used Ultrix at his university, 100K byte. Yeah, right. You had like, what is that? Like maybe, that was a lot back then, actually. It was like about 10 floppies. So, and they wouldn't let you install Pine there. Yeah, my university, so we had, and as I'm talking, I will record my B-roll footage here. My university, we had a VAX system, and then we also had, am I hearing anything? So it looks like the audio doesn't work. Hey, this is my governor. Let's see. I think the audio is not functional. So I've seen this before where it gives you a volume knob, but it doesn't actually, yeah, so if I go to output device, so I'm not hearing it out of the speakers, but it says speaker. Yeah, speaker's all the way up. And the microphone works. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah, so it looks like the audio is not working. So I definitely don't have headphones plugged in. But I'm not hearing anything out of these speakers. So audio does not seem to be working out of the gate here. But in the meantime here, we'll let this kind of run so people can see it working. So no audio, but it looks like everything else is running nice and snappy here. And Michael says, HP laptops are notorious for using odd amp on-off switches that have to be probed into the driver. That sounds painful. So maybe, I wonder if there's a mute button that we could just like trigger here. Yeah, it just doesn't seem to be giving us any sound. But that's one of those things, because sometimes people want to know that they have the option. And most of these laptops that we've looked at recently just kind of pop up. Right, and so as things get updated, it will do that. So my university had a finger smashing. You put 100 megabyte. Well, I never even thought about doing that. So Michael, would you do like a UUE encode on that? Right, like that was what people, UUE was the protocol, right? That was what people would encode binary on Usenet with, which they still do to this day. Tommy Gray, thank you for the follow on Amazon. Yeah, so I think we've got the footage we need on the Linux side. So let's boot it back into Windows. Now what's probably going to happen here is that when I reboot, this, it's going to give us an error. And I'm going to have to go into my Microsoft account and manually type in this certificate to get back into my Windows thing. All right, so let's power it down here. Yeah, so let me finish my story now. So my college had a VAX system. So most of the student body was using the VAX system. And my freshman year, my email address was like this long. It was a ridiculous, yep, here it is, this BitLocker recovery thing. It was this huge, long password. And give me a second here. I've got to go aka.ms/myrecoverykey. And I got to log into my test account here to get into, actually, let me do it on the other one. And so we had a VAX system with a huge long email address. And then over time, well, actually, so they had that, and then there was a Unix machine that if you knew where it was located, you can go down and apply for an account. So the system admins, as as I'm sure many of you can attest, were very protective of that machine. It was called Morpheus after the Matrix. Actually, it was before the Matrix, so it was called Morpheus. And you could get on Morpheus and you'd have the full Unix experience. And they had Usenet coming into that machine. They actually spec'd it out pretty good, but this was 94, so the systems were more powerful at that point. I'm just logging into my Microsoft account so that I can get into this thing. So bear with me here. And what I have to do is look up my where'd it go? I have to look up my thing here. And then the VAX system had like a bunch of chat features. And my roommate had a very short last name, so he was getting dates from the VAX system because like people would just chat him up all the time because his name was so quick to type in. Because you had to look at who was on, and then you had to leave that screen and then chat to the person. You know what I mean? So like they would, yeah. He actually met one of his. He met somebody on there. All right. Give me a second here to wait for this email to come in. So I'm trying to get into my account. And I think the email is going to my other Google account. Oh, wow, I missed a whole bunch of chats here. Gadget Addict recently looked at a Chromebook. Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? The Linux stuff is great. It used to be like I would do a review of a Chromebook and it would be 5 or 6 minutes. There wasn't much to show, and now it's like, whoa, there's a lot going on. All right, so I need to go figure out where my email is because I have to get one of those codes from their thing, and I don't see it in here. Maybe it's my spam. Let's see. Nope, not in the spam. Oh, I think I have to type in maybe I have to type it in. Hang on. Bear with me here, folks. Yes, I got to type in the email address, and then it will send me the code. All right, so let's do that. I have a test account that I use for testing computers, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One is that if I ever get some computer that is of questionable origin, I don't have to worry about that account getting hacked. There's nothing in there that's valuable to anybody. But also, in case it shows up on a video, I have a, it doesn't bother me if somebody tries to get into it. Not that I want somebody to, you know what I mean. Yeah, I think that's one of the things, Poorly Buffalo. It does take a while for the drivers, as Michael points out, to catch up. That's why I always keep track. Actually, one of my viewers, Roman, who tweets me all the time, lets me know when there's a new version of Ubuntu. Oh, I already left. Sorry about that. Yeah, and part of what it is too, I like to see if it's like the consumer should not have to do that, right? So I'm like, okay, does it detect it or not? And that's kind of how I look for it. And phone was what we used. That's exactly what we were doing, I think, was phone. And they took that away from you too, huh? Where did you go to school, Chris? You probably went to a school where there was a lot more computer nerds than at my school. And then so if you wanted to use the World Wide Web, this is going to sound like one of those old man stories. We had to go walk across, but we literally had to walk across campus to the computer center to get access to the World Wide Web. And it ran on serial connections on the Mac initially. And then they did point-to-point protocol, or whatever that thing is, PP. It was through the, what did it work through? It worked through, here it is. Sorry, I'm just multitasking here. It worked through the terminal, and it provided basically a point-to-point protocol kind of thing. Mohammed is joining us on Amazon. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, I locked myself out of the computer. This happens every time I boot Windows up on one of these things. And so what I've got now is I'm looking through a huge list of keys to unlock my computer. This is it here. Yep. Okay, now I got it. And then it shuts itself off if you don't type it in soon enough. So when you have one of these Windows 11 machines that's locked down, when you boot off another drive, it doesn't let you back in until you come up with the BitLocker recovery key here. So that's what I'm typing into this thing now. The good news is that I've got most of what I need to get done on it already. So what's next is just going through some of my research from prior Ryzen machines like it, just to make sure that the performance is where I think it should be. The keyboard isn't bad on it. It's, you know, it's a plasticky keyboard, but it's got a decent amount of travel to it. There we go. That should do it. Now bring us back to Windows. Yeah, there was PPP and Slip, but there was another one that would work through the terminal. So they were actually, you would log into the terminal, and then so you weren't like dialing up with the remote networking thing. You would dial into the terminal, and then it would actually deliver PPP over binary to ASCII conversion. I can't remember the name of it. And Mark went to Syracuse. I went to the University of Hartford, where I teach on occasion. And Chris was at a SUNY school. Not sure if they're underfunded this. Yeah, a lot of times I think the system administrators like to keep it all to themselves, right? So David went to UConn. By the way, I met David at Retro World Expo not too long ago. And they were putting in 10100 Ethernet in the dorm starting in '95 with a global IP. So we did not get Ethernet at the University of Hartford until 1997. So the 97, 98 year was the first year with Ethernet. And that was like awesome, because the biggest issue we had was that you would share the phone line with your roommate. So you both could not be online at the same time, especially with the terminal-based stuff. I think I might have rigged up some kind of proxy setup at some point, but having the network drop in the dorm room was awesome, because you could talk on the phone at the same time you were using the internet, and then your roommate could be on the internet at the same time you were. And I think what they did, I'm trying to remember how it was run. I think we had two, if it was a double, there was 2 drops. And then I started, getting routers hooked up so you could extend that a little bit. And then what happened was the IT department, I set up a little mini business because the IT department was not equipped to connect students to the network. So I was granted authorized service provider status, and so I bought I was buying Ethernet cards in like bulk. I bought like whatever the distributor pack was. So I had a distributor. I bought, I think, like 6 or 12 Kingston Ethernet cards at a time. Mostly ISA cards, because most of the computers I was encountering were ISA based, so they were pretty inexpensive. And I would hook you up to the network. I'd come to your dorm room, I'd set the network card up and plug you in. So I probably did several dozen computers over the course of that year. And David said they did 1 drop per roommate. And Poorly Buffalo, talking on the phone, I can just about remember that. Yeah. Yeah, and the phone bill was awful. So we were given a, AT&T was the phone provider. I think it was like 25 cents a minute to make a phone call. But this was around the time, so I was in school from 94 to 98. So during this period of time was when the cell phones started coming out. And so I think my junior year, yeah, so I had a cell phone, but it cost 75 cents a minute to use it. And it was like one of those bag phones. And then my junior year, yeah, it was my junior year, I got a flip phone. Like, actually, this is not the one, but it's my flip phone right over there, the Motorola. I got a flip phone, and it was still 75 cents a minute, but they were like, they were doing the drug pusher concept with the minutes. So you would get for the first like the first year, it was like a long time. For the first year, you had free nights and weekends, and nights would start at 7 p.m. and the weekend would start 7 p.m. Friday, and you have free use all weekend. So I talked on that thing constantly because the whole state was a local call. So I could call everybody in the state as a local call after 7 o'clock and on the weekend. And I racked up minutes like you wouldn't believe. And then they would rug pull it. So what happened would be that you would have free nights and weekends for that trial period, and then after that they rug pulled you. Eventually they started doing, they started selling you that free nights and weekends. But yeah, that was crazy. And it was partially because these were analog cell phones. You know, so the digital phones can use time division multiple access and CDMA, so you can divvy up one slice of spectrum for multiple users. And it's getting much more sophisticated now. So on a digital connection, especially with the 5G, you can connect a lot more people over the same amount of bandwidth. But back then, you were just, you know, an analog radio signal. So yeah, so there was definitely a limit to how many people could be on the phone at the same time. And David still has his Yukon Ethernet card mounted on my workshop wall as a trophy. That's awesome. You know what I have? It's over there right now. I don't have my Ethernet card, but I do have my Ethernet cable. It was expensive. You had to buy, this stuff was not cheap back then. So I had my patch cable. It's a blue Cat 5 patch cable, not 5E, but a Cat 5, maybe it's Cat 3. No, I think it's Cat 5. Yeah, I bought the Cat 5 patch cable because I bought a 100 megabit card and anticipating that we would get to that speed at some point. And I think when they first hooked us up, we were only 10 megabits. But I still have the cable. The cable's still fine, so I use it for one of my testing stations over there. So it's my lucky Ethernet cable, I call it. So yeah, well, the good news is we got Windows back up on this thing. So I've got just a few more things that I am probably going to run out of time for. But I am going to install DaVinci Resolve on here because we always like to do a little video editing test in the review. Oops, wrong thing. DaVinci, not DaVinci the artist, DaVinci Resolve. There we go. And we'll get the free downloads. So there's a free version and then there's a studio version, but the free one's good just for testing out our stuff. Problem is I got to keep typing my information in every time. Unless it looks like Jake may have stored. No, I guess not. Yeah, I guess he did. All right, good for Jake. My test account actually has a thing in here. All right. There we go. So we'll download DaVinci Resolve. And I think it's downloading. Yep, it's going right now. Okay. It's amazing. Talk about like downloads. Here I am on a wireless connection, and I can download a 3 gigabyte file in less than a minute on Wi-Fi, right? Like without even something connected to it. Because when I first got my Wi-Fi hooked up, that was like a revelation, you know? Like, oh my gosh, this actually works. And Chris learned how to crimp. Yeah, it was pretty fun when I figured that out too. I bought a little kit for that. A lot of patience initially to get it going and get it right the first time, but. So those cables are still, there's a lot of actually undersea cables. Most of the communication in the world now is done via undersea cables. And I did not hear this. DaVinci Resolve is on the iPad. I'm surprised they got to that faster than, let me look it up in here. Was this announced today? Bars is asking about it too. Yeah. So as for the M2 MacBook iPad Pro. So now they've got to put Final Cut on there. That's awesome. Apple is actually the one that announced it. So you would think Apple would put Final Cut on there versus a competing product, right? Huh. Yeah, we'll check it out when it's available. I don't have an M2 iPad, though, nor do I have an intention of getting one. But maybe one of my friends will get one and I can borrow it. All right, so let's go over to DaVinci Resolve here. It's going to extract the file. Oops. Corey says the CDMA network is a way of getting all the way down to the IMEI identifiers in terms of the phone is blacklisted or not. Yeah, weren't they stealing IMEIs off of people and they were driving over bridges because it wasn't encrypted, right? They were like cloning phones. There was some bridge in New York City that if you had your phone on when you went over the bridge, it was more than likely your phone was going to get cloned by somebody. And they would rack up a bill because they would make their phone identify itself as yours because the numbers were just in the clear, right? So install isn't bad. It's about a 3 gigabyte file. And the install, as you'll see, is pretty quick. It's not too bad. Yeah, I remember. It's funny how like my kids have no concept of this either. But I remember even like if I got a package from somebody and having a newspaper from another city was a big deal. Like, oh, wow, look at this, a newspaper from Chicago. My father used to, when he would travel, my father would travel all over the world, so he would always bring back newspapers from all the different countries he visited, and that was like amazing, right? To see that little slice of, even if you couldn't read the language, it was just cool. So, all right. Well, folks, I'll let this finish installing here, but I got to run because my family just got home. I heard the garage door open. Yes, I would agree with what Jero says. Get the firmware updated ASAP. The good news is I would do that. If it came with drives, I would put new ones in, because the Synologies will install the OS, I believe, on your hard drives, not on anything that's stored locally on the device. So if you put your own drives in and start from scratch, I think it's like a fresh slate. So I would look at this if it actually worked at my house. I am in an area where we get, I get cell service for phone, basically. I get no, but T-Mobile doesn't even work where I live. So if I had access to a place where it was available, I would totally test it. And I would test Verizon's service also. But we have 5G in some parts of town, but not where I am located at the moment. So I am on a really slow LTE connection here. Oh, so you don't need, but you do need an M1 iPad though, wouldn't you, or no? So I would imagine there's some RAM considerations. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think the iPad Air with the M1 has what, 8 gigs of RAM? And Corey's got a good point here. That no one's even made use of the M1 on the iPad yet, so you could definitely do that. Yeah, I think if you're in a good spot, the T-Mobile is great, as would any of them be, especially if you have an ultra-wideband 5G. Because when I was even at the train station in New York, at Grand Central Station, if any of you ever go there, if you have a Verizon phone at least, you could stand in the middle of like the big atrium, and you will get over a gigabit downstream wirelessly from the ultra-wideband network in Grand Central. And then upstream is like, I think it was like 40 or 50 megabits. They really pushed the downstream more than the upstream for sure, but all right, let me just make sure this is running. I got a jet because the family is here. Yeah, I got my hair, thank you, Ear Mode. I got my hair cut today, and my gray is definitely becoming more and more prevalent. The older my children get, the grayer I get, I think, there's a direct correlation. Wow, you had a huge latency shift there. Yeah, Viasat, I can imagine, right? You're in a much better place. And if you have that, that's certainly a better option than Starlink would be. My brother lives in a spot with nothing at all, except like a really bad DSL connection. So if you look on my channel, we did a video setting him up with Starlink, and it was awesome. So, all right, I'm just going to load up DaVinci Resolve. I still have to get footage brought over to it, but you can just get a feel for it here. But it looks like it'll Oops. It'll run on here, no problem. And yeah, it is a good deal because like Starlink is $100 a month, and you won't get that level of performance on it. And if you're out in the boonies, you're not going to have that much competition on the cell tower, right? You're not going to have people moving in. Where I live, it's like all built out, and we all have two-acre lots, so there's not a lot of density. So if they ever get it going, it's going to work pretty well, I think, for the most part. But I will say I'm very satisfied with my very expensive Comcast fiber optic connection. So I've been pushing 500 megabits, I'm sorry, 6 gigabits upstream, and I do 30 for the YouTube 4K stream that we're on right now on YouTube. And then the Amazon stream goes up at 2.5 megabits. So I'm pushing, over the last 2 hours, about 35, 40 megabits per second upstream. So it works pretty good. Check out the video with my brother. It works great. It's been, for him, it's been consistent. He did have an issue unrelated to the service, but his house got hit by lightning, and we had to replace the power over Ethernet box. That burnt out. Thankfully, the dish didn't get fried. So I actually shipped him my dish. I have a dish I keep as a spare in case we have an outage here. So I shipped him my dish, and it turns out it was just the PoE box that was at fault. So he was able to get back up and running. Billy Harris, thank you for the follow. But definitely check out my video of it because we did a bunch of extensive tests. Lon.TV/Starlink. And actually, I tested it at his place, and then I tested it here in Connecticut a few months later. And so you'll see it operating and get a feel for it. I would say it's the equivalent, if you have to keep a good section of the sky clear for it, but it's the equivalent of like a low-end cable subscription. Very low latency, really good. He did not get the new receiver though, so he's still using the round dish. William's got AT&T, and there's no service where I live, no AT&T stores. So I have AT&T for my phone and AT&T for internet, and had to drop them. Yeah, Xfinity, for me, I have my problems with Comcast from some of the monopolistic practices and whatnot. But they're starting to get more competition. But the fiber that I have with them is excellent. It is rock solid. It's expensive, but I get 6 gigabits symmetrical, so it's pretty good. So my brother's dish took about, this was now almost 2 years ago. So he got it in 2020. It was February of 2021. And it took, he was in an area that was available for the beta. It took him about 2 weeks to get it from the time of order. It was pretty quick. And then we actually had to fly up there because they were still on a lockdown protocol. And if you stayed more than 24 hours, you had to be quarantined. So we went in and did our thing and left. But you can check out the video. It was actually a lot of fun. And then we did another video, a follow-up a year later. And we did a tour of his farm where he makes maple syrup. So it's really cool. Hey, Jiro says Starlink is average. Yeah, I've been hearing they're getting in more of the, even though they don't advertise as being functional in densely populated areas, I think areas like mine that are sparse but denser than rural areas are seeing a lot of usage. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Russians are screwing around with the satellites also. So that might be having some issues there too. Zoom actually plateaus at some point because it compresses the crap out of it. I actually check I always look at my little bandwidth meter to see what's going on. And Zoom is generally about a megabit upstream, even in HD. Now, I am not paying for Zoom. I'm usually a freeloader on somebody else's account. But none of the accounts that I've used make use of the higher quality video. So the base level Zoom plan that you would pay for does 720p, highly compressed max. You have to get up to that second tier business plan to get the higher quality video. So that's how that works. And Dill Spirit, yes, you were probably in one of those areas. It was weird. Like there's parts of my town where like I could get it, but somebody else nearby couldn't. And then what happened was I got the service for a month just to review it. And my intent was that I wanted to have the dish in case we had an outage, because where I live, oh, hang on. Where I live, we get these storms that knock power out for a month or more. So not a month, like a week or more. And sometimes it takes longer to get the internet back up because we're just on poles on wires. And if I'm on fiber all the way back to the head end, if any fiber along the way gets cut, I'm done. So I got the dish to be as like a backup. And they, so what did they say to me? They said, so I had the service for a month. I canceled it after the first month. And then I wanted to re-enable it. We had this hurricane last year. I wanted to re-enable it for the hurricane just in case we lost connections. And they wouldn't let me restore it because they had too many people signed up in the area. So that was the end of that. Trigger W on the Amazon chat says, I locked in a Zoom plan at 50% off just before COVID hit. Oh, so you got a good deal. Yeah, so I think they jacked the price up for all those other plans after the lockdown started. But Zoom is pretty good. I like it. The webinar system is really decent on it. And I've been, as you can imagine, I was consulting, volunteer-wise for a lot of nonprofit groups in the area and the school system and stuff. And there's a lot of areas where Zoom works really well. When you're trying, even with a lot of people, it works really well. When you want to have something that's private yet available to a lot of people. So, all right, everybody, I got a jet. But look for the review of this. I'm going to shoot this in the mornings. I've got most of my work done on it. So we will have a full review coming up in the morning. Or I'll be shooting it in the morning. Maybe you'll see it later in the week. And we will get together and see what I think of it. Not a bad laptop. It's priced, I think, pretty competitively. And there's different variations of it, so we'll talk about the different variations. Not the brightest screen on the base model, but it's kind of the entry-level point. And from a build perspective, for the price, it's not bad. So, hey, Sam Lazar is here from Down Under. We are just wrapping up, unfortunately, but I will be back again soon. You know what's funny about the Amazon thing is that I get no traffic right up until the time I'm about to end, and then everybody comes in. So for those of you on Amazon, I'll give a quick recap here. This is the HP Envy X360. This was on sale at the Amazon preview thing. This is a 15-inch 1080p laptop, touch display. It flips over. Does not come with a pen. I don't know if they had a pen in the box here. Let me look and see. It will work with pens, but I don't think there is one. There was no pen that came with this one. But you can use it as a tablet. HP, so it's got a good warranty and support and whatnot. Got your USB port, headphone jack. You've got your SD card slot, a full-size one. And what I'm curious about, actually, does it stick out or not? Let's see. Believe it or not, this is something people ask, does it, takes the whole card in. Goes right in there, so you can have a nice offset or a nice augmented storage on there. You got two USB 3 ports here, 3.2 Gen 2. Note that these are not Thunderbolt or USB 4, so no GPU with this one. But these are full service, so you can plug video into those. You got your HDMI output, another USB port there. It's kind of bigger and heavier, but it's also 15-inch. So the 15s are bigger just by their nature. But I know a lot of folks, like my mother-in-law, likes a bigger screen. It's easier to see. And it's running at 1080p, so things are pretty large, but at a decent resolution. So it's not too bad. All right, I got a jet, everybody, but thank you all for tuning in and look for the review. I've got a bunch of other streams coming up this week, so my goal is to knock another PC off the list and then do another thing. There we go, we're back. Okay, so give me 1 second here. All right, we're back. So I will be back before you know it, and we'll have another stream. So if you are following, if you're on Amazon, click the follow button, and you'll get notified when I do these things, because what I do is I usually stick to one product, we get it in, and we test it. And I get ready for my bigger reviews. Sometimes I actually film my reviews live on Amazon, so you can check those out. And if you're not on Amazon right now, there's a link on the YouTube channel to go over to Amazon where you can follow me on Amazon that way. So definitely hit the follow. I want to thank Billy Harris and Steve Green, who just hit that button. And yeah, good stuff. So there you go. All right. Oh, and I want to thank Darth Tyrannus 1 and Matthew Burden for their support of the live stream through memberships and super chats. And thank you all for tuning in. And like I said, hit the follow, hit the notification thing, and we'll be back again before you know it. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.